Hey, what's going on, everybody? Back with another classic game right here. This game comes from the Fujitsu Siemens Giants tournament and took place in the year 2000, June 23rd, 2000 to be exact. Can you believe it? 24 years ago, on top of the world at the time was Vladimir Kramnik at the height of his powers, rated at 2758 at the time, with the white pieces, and the mercurial GM Alexander Morozevich with the black pieces, who was also the height of his powers at the time at 2748. And what I love about the games of Morozevich is that he was willing to take chances and play openings that were not always given a stamp of approval at the highest levels of chess, but he was always one of those grandmasters that tried to find his own way, and it worked out pretty well. With his high point being that he was number 2 in the world at his peak. So here the game started out d4 from Kramnik, d5 for Morozevich, and c4. Can you guess what opening Morozevich played here? All right, knight c6. Sometimes he would play Albin counter gambit, but he played the Chigorin's, another one of his pet openings that he would bring out from time to time. Knight f3. This is one of the classical responses. There's several responses. You can play c takes d5, knight c3, but Kramnik chose knight f3 here, bishop g4, and knight c3, and now e6, and now Kramnik plays bishop f4, slightly offbeat line, but this shows me that perhaps Kramnik was not fully prepared to face Chigorin's defense, and he just wanted to get a solid position here. Morozevich takes, as is common in the Chigorins, giving up the bishop pair for the knight. G takes f3. And what this move does is that it opens up the G file for white later on, and it also builds up a white center. So the double pawns aren't as bad as they seem. White does have compensation in form of the bishop pair and the preponderance in the center with his pawns, and also the open G file here. Bishop d6, bishop g3, and knight ge7. This is a move that Kramnik would play against setups with bishop f4. I'll place it in the link below, but there is a good book called The Chigorin According to Morozevich, which is actually written by Morozevich and co-authored by another strong player. And oftentimes when you see these type of opening books written, it's usually written by someone else, and they're going over the games of a great player. So it might be, say, Roy Lopez according to Anand, right? But it'll be written by some international master. Not saying that's bad, but in this case, the Chigorin According to Morozevich is actually written by Morozevich and featuring his own commentary on the games, etc. So it's a good book. I also have another book on the Chigorins, which is really good. But I'll be posting those in the links below if you're interested, as I always do. After the video. So e3 was played, and now queen d7, and now Chigorin Morozevich is just basically keeping his options open here. Is he gonna castle king side? Is he gonna castle queen side? Right? But he is also showing one of the ideas too of this move, knight ge7 here, and that is to have the option of playing this move f5. And so now we have kind of like a stonewall position. The other idea of this move, knight ge7, that I didn't explain here, is to avoid pinning scenarios with bishop h4. He actually mentions this in the book, Chigorin, according to Morozevich, why he didn't play knight f6. He didn't, not that he thought it was bad, but he wanted to avoid the pin scenarios and have flexibility with the f pawn. So this is why knight ge7 is played. e3, queen d7, queen d2, and now f5, and you can see how he's able to utilize the f pawn in the battle of the center. So now we have this stonewall type position, if you please. Bishop takes d6, queen takes d6, and of course white doesn't want to have to deal with a move like f4. All right, so yeah, would he win the pawn? But yes, but the problem is you have to move, like f4 from black, and let's say after pawn takes, then the d pawn is vulnerable to capture, and then you have triple pawns on the f file. So that's not a good look for white. So bishop takes, queen takes, castle's queen side. Now here's a moment of truth right here. Morozevich chooses the castle on the king side. Now you have this opposite wing position, and these are always exciting when both players are on the opposite sides of the board. f4. So now you have basically a reverse stonewall setup. These are usually favorable for white. Of course, each position has its nuances and differences, but usually symmetrical reverse stonewall positions will be favorable for white because white has the upper hand as far as tempi and being able to attack. And here is definitely better for white because he has the open G file to boot. Because if you think of traditional stonewall attack situations, normally white will not have this G file already opened. So white has a direct access to the king already on the G file, and he's able to use his pawn on f3 at any moment to keep the black knight out of e4, whereas conversely, there's nothing that black can do to keep a knight out of e5 except constantly monitor e5 with his knight. So that's the difference in the position with these two stonewall positions. White's piece is a little bit have a little bit more leeway in that they can white doesn't really have to worry about guarding the e4 square per se, because he has the pawn on f3. So a6 is played. King b1, just basically finishing the long castle, right? Knight d8. All right, and so now we're gonna see these some maneuvering. Right now it's time to bring the c pawn into play. Rook g1, natural looking move, and now c6, solidifying that stonewall. Now we definitely have a reverse stonewall, right? And now knight e2, and we see some maneuvering by Kramnik, and I just highlighted the squares showing a possible route that the white knight could take. So the first one, the one highlighted in yellow, shows that the knight can go from e2 to c1, d3, e5. The other one is he can go to g3 and plant himself on h5, putting pressure on the G pawn. Knight f7. So just bringing some defense. Again, if white was to get his knight into e5, black would probably trade it off. Knight c1, knight c8. Okay, so just some more maneuvering, and you'll see where that knight is going in a second. Rook g3. Again, white's position seems easier to play, and black has to worry about defense now. So I will have to say the opening not too successful for black. It's like he already has to be extremely careful here. So now queen e7, and so now we see the idea earlier of this move, knight c8, is to hop in e5, e4 rather, with his knight. So he clears the d6 square by playing queen e7, and so now the knight can just hop in there. But he hasn't reckoned with his opponent, as the old chess books would say, and so c5 hinders that idea. So now Morozevich goes to queen c7. Right, this is the backup plan, right? Plan B, and now to move the knight to e7. So bishop e2, king e8. Get off the g file, right? The rooks are gonna double up. Rook dg1, and now rook g8. Knight d3, knight e7, h4. Here comes the attack. h5 by Morozevich. I'm sorry, g6 by Morozevich, h5 by Kramnik. Rook g7. And of course, Morozevich would love if Kramnik just played, didn't open up the position. But of course, he's gonna open up the position. H takes g6, knight takes g6, and now the attack is gonna switch to the h file. So again, you can see white has all the attacking possibilities. Black has not built up any counterplay at this point, so it's looking very dreary for Morozevich here, and he has to be very careful already. Rook a g8, rook gh3, knight f8. What's the purpose of knight f8? Again, I show the route of the knight, or a possible route of the knight to e4. But one of the ideas, the second idea is to play rook g1, trade a pair of rooks off, right? Take some of that pressure off of the white's attack. So queen d1, again, the opponent has moves too. So Kramnik sees that. He's like, no, we're not trading any rooks. So now queen e7. Bishop h5. And one of the ideas here is to play bishop takes f7 so that white can have free access to e5 with his knight. Because now if he just jumps in knight e5, Morozevich will be happy just to trade the knight off. So knight d8, not allowing the trade, but this allows white to jump in to a5. Now here, I feel like Kramnik plays some moves that are unnecessary here. He plays this move a3. And again, I see that he wants to tuck the king away because he doesn't want any counterplay from black. He's trying to eliminate all counterplay. So the idea is to play a3, put the king on h2, and then he doesn't have to worry about any potential checks or trade-offs of the rooks on g1, because he's planning on transferring the queen over to the king side to help with the attack, and so that's why he's doing it. So I understand that. However, he could have just hopped in the knight e5 right here and say knight d7. Again, trying to get rid of that dangerous knight on e5. Knight f3. Right, not allowing a trade. Let's say rook f8, for example. Knight g5, putting more pressure on h7 and the general complex of squares around the king. And then let's say rook f6. So that's a great position for white. So a3 was played, knight d7, and again you see this cat and mouse game with this e5 square. King a2, Kramnik continues with his plan, and now knight f6. Knight f6, attacking the bishop and looking at the e4 square. Now Kramnik jumps in, and now knight d7. So again, some cat and mouse going on here. This time, bishop g6 is played. All right, with this threat against h7. Again, knight f3 could have been played here. Knight f6, knight g5, a5, for example, queen g1. These are sample lines. Rook f8 and queen h2. Again, this is all good for white. So just so you know, white is in the, if you can't tell, white is in the driver's seat. It's controlling things. Black is on the defensive. bishop g6 from Kramnik, and knight f8. All right, defending h7, attacking the piece. And here is a moment where you could pause the game and try to figure out what white's best move is. All right, so I'll give you a second if you want to pause it yourself, set it up on the board, what have you. So now I'm getting ready to show you the game continuation here. So white to move. So Kramnik played bishop h5 here. All right, and so Kramnik, well, I'll continue with the game. So he played bishop h5, and the game continued knight d7. So after the bishop moves, right, and you can see the bishop is now out, kind of, out of the way a little bit, blocking the action of the two rooks on the h file. So now again, knight d7. This cat and mouse game with this knight on e5. Knight goes back here. Knight f6. Now the knight jumps into g5. Knight e4. And now Morozevich is actually threatening a nice fork there, as you can see. And now a trade of knights. So Morozevich gets what he wants. D takes. And now having the bishop, Kramnik's going to try to open the position up. E takes f3. Bishop takes f3 happens. Rook fe8. e4. And right now, black is dealing with the problems in the position as he should. He's keeping it close to the vest, and he's just trading off when he can. He's very passive, but he's not completely lost, although white has an advantage. So white is trying to open that position up. He is opening the position up, because he needs to create more problems. As long as he just has one problem for black to solve, black is able to solve that. So he needs to create a position that has two problems simultaneously, or even three, so that black is not able to defend in his position any longer. So d5 is played. Morozevich starts playing very well here. Queen takes c5, queen e2, and it looks like that there should be some way where white can land some kind of knockout blow, but Morozevich plays very well, and Kramnik is just not able to do it. Queen e5, queen d6, often the trade of queens. Bishop takes d5, and you can see now that it's actually white who's down a pawn here. Knight c6. Queens get traded. Bishop b3. And Morozevich has defended very well, and at this point has nothing to worry about. And the game wind up being a draw. And now you might say, I'm just speeding through these last moves. The game was a draw at this point after 62 rook e7. Now you might say, wow, white's position looks fantastic. Like, how did that end in a draw? Kramnik had to miss something, right? So this is why we analyze and we look at the games, right? So we go back to this position right here, where so we had this cat and mouse game. This is at move 31. Knight e5 was played, knight d7, and then bishop g6. Morozevich played knight f8 here, attacking this bishop, and Kramnik made the move bishop h5. Here is where I told you to look at the game and analyze the position if you had time. And this is why. It's because Kramnik actually missed a moment of glory here. This would have been a fantastic conclusion to this game. This game probably would have went down as one of the great classics. This would have definitely been in one of these compilation books that they would make, like the mammoth chess games and all the stuff like that, because this move is so beautiful. But unfortunately, he did not play this move, and the move is just simply bishop takes h7. And it's always nice when you could play these kind of moves, because if you see that black has so much resources dedicated to protecting the h7 square, and white is able to take it anyway. So for example, rook takes h7, rook takes h7, knight takes, and then queen h5. And the idea is that black ends up in a zugzwang position. So for example, queen h7 here, queen g7, right? Natural move. However, after this, there's really no more good moves for white. Excuse me, for black. So after rook h3, now what? The knight on h7 is pinned to the king. The knight on d8 can't move. I mean, it can legally, but if it goes to f7, it's going to be bad news for black, because white will just capture on f7, and then black has to give up the queen. So the two knights are paralyzed. All right. If rook f8, right? Let's say you just tries to shuffle the rook around. Rook f8, then the knight's gonna come to g6. So I'll show you that. Right. Well, I'm sorry. First you have this move, rook g3, queen f6, and then knight g6, and it's lights out at this point. It's king g8, and I'll just show you the fancy variation. Queen h6, king f7, takes, king e8, takes, and black just loses everything. If king f8, then just mate. If queen takes, lose a queen. Right, so the rook can't move. Therefore, black has to try to move like a5, and he's just basically jettisoning pawns. Another idea, right? Let's say instead of queen g7, rook g7, to try to create some type of room for the king on g8. You got the fork there, so now you have to give the rook by force, and just queen takes g6. And again, the black knight on d8 is absolutely useless. And what's going to happen is rook takes h7 is coming, right? Queen takes h7, and then you're going to see that the ending is going to be good for the white player. So I'll show you another one with rook g7. So after rook g7, for example, this check, right? Queen takes, queen g7, and then again with the pins and the bad position of the knights, right? Knight on the rim is dim, right? All that stuff. But here you can really see it. Queen g8, and then you could just start picking off pawns here, and just exploiting the fact that the knight on h7 always has to be watched because of the mate possibilities, as well as the knight on d8 basically being handicapped. So after say knight f7, right? You say, hey, black is starting to consolidate. What happens is now you could just start picking up these pawns, because there's no danger presented by black in the position. You can see the mate is threatened again. So black has to go back. Queen d7. Let's say queen g6 is just simple lines. Now you can just start pushing the pawns. f5. Now queen e6. Now you offer a trade. f6, queen g8. And you just squeeze black until the position just gives you the fruit that you're looking for, right? Which is just an overwhelming advantage. Queen g8, queen d7, queen f8, and you just take another pawn. There's nothing that black can do. Knight h6, for example. See, now you can offer trade the queens, right? Because you're about to promote. So let's say queen takes. and then you could just go right into the end game. And again, that's just a sample line, but trust me, you could look at it yourself. Black is totally in a state of Zugzwang. So going back to bishop takes h7 right here. Rook takes knight e7, queen h5. Right here's the main line. Right, queen g7, and rook h3 is very powerful. And so all black can resort to is moves like a5, because any type of movement of the rook or the queen or the knight on d8 is just gonna result in the position just collapsing. So king b3, that's why I'm able to make a foolish move, foolish looking move like king b3, just to emphasize that there's really nothing that black can do. Let's say, for example, queen c7, right? Once queen c7 is played, it allows the knight to come into g6. You see? This basically forces the capture. And now, again, you're in a similar situation whereby the knight on h7 has to constantly be monitored. So the queen can't go anywhere. So e7. And now just simple tactics. Rook takes, queen f6 check. And now you're hitting the king and the knight on d7, queen g7, and this is a winning ending for for white. So instead of queen c7, black has to continue with a move like a4. I mean, if you wanted to be funny, you could just take. The king takes b6. But probably most players, who just want to win the game, they would just tuck the king safely in without really trying to make it any waves, and again you would have like a same situation, because what is black gonna do? You end up in the same type of position. Excuse me. You end up in the same type of position as before. But after king takes a4, right? b6. Again, there's nothing that really can be done. But here it gets a little funny, because now you can see the queen has some checks and things like that. So that's why you just play a move like that. But you can actually play you can actually do that if you want. I'll just show it real quick for those that are curious. So like say like b6 takes, queen here, king a5, check. Again, now that the queen is gone, it's the same principles, except black has a little more counterplay, right? See, now he's checking and stuff, and of course nobody wants to go be dealing with this, but it's the same thing, because once the king gets too far away, it's like, gotta go protect the knight. It's that knight on h7 that's the killer. So the queen winds up going back, queen e8, king g7. You had like the same type of scenarios over and over, right? What's black gonna do to avoid mate? So it starts giving up material, and that's checkmate right there. So basically, that is it, man. That's the video. I just wanted to show this game, and show that Vladimir Kramnik missed his chance right here at immortality. Listen, he's already there. Like, I mean, I know he's become somewhat of a meme, lately, with the antics and stuff like that. But as far as his play on the board, like there's no debating that his time on the board, at the top level is legendary, and he can be put up there with the greatest of the greats. But yeah, so did he miss his chance at immortality? I'm gonna say no, because he is up there. But this game, he had a chance, to add a game to the Immortal games. And I think if he found this move, Bishop takes 8-7, man, this game definitely would have been talked about, because again, it's not like he's just playing a low rated player or something. I think at this time Morozevich is either 2 or 3 in the world at the time. Somebody could check that out. But anyway, that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that. All the typical salutations to everybody, man. I'm happy if you watching. Also, just like I said, consider supporting the channel using the links below, and also find below there'll be links to DVDs and books related to the opening. So in every video, I always, like, if I'm talking about a specific opening or system, I'll try to put DVDs and books, resources related to that system. So if you're interested, you can go and check them out. So like I said, in lieu of all that, at the very least, just hit the thumbs up button. And thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.